Welcome to Gray Eminence Media. All right, guys, this is part 3, so let's get into it.
And
Absolutely.
So the thing I want us to caution against is, what are they doing against Trump right now, right? It's sort of the old Stalin.
No, I get what you're saying.
Find the man, I'll find the offense.
You don't want the
right?
pendulum to swing back the other way.
It's not like a pendulum thing. It's just like, I will never lead a Justice Department that says, find the man, then find the offense. No. But if we find an offense, then we're going to hold the man or the woman accountable for it. And that's what we need in this country. So the rule of law, and that means that absolutely Anthony Fauci, I believe on the facts we currently have, is criminally liable.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be the other side and say that's preordained, but it better be investigated, go to a full court of law. And
absolutely.
No way he's getting a pardon on that either. He has to serve the time for what he did for this country. But I stand for the rule of law, and I want to make sure that we never become them.
I get that. I think we differ there. You know,
do we differ though?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do a little bit, because I believe this is an exceptional, extraordinary experience that we've all been through. You've never been through this in your entire life,
because they broke the law. That's my point.
Yeah, I know, but and I understand that.
Yeah,
but millions of people, died.
So here's where I'm at on that.
People lost their life's
livelihoods.
Work,
yep.
Right. And you and I both know how much did you pay to be where you were? I gave everything, dude. I've given everything, and when I think of what's happened, I think of it no different than the accountability that needed to be had in Nuremberg.
And a generation of kids who will never be the same. So I think that,
I mean,
I think, first of all, we should hold China accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an intentionality of this from China's side, too. They intentionally...
but there's an argument that we did it.
Well, there's accountability for Fauci.
Yeah, so the truth is that China and the United States are both culpable in this COVID, in this, how do I say this? The United States and China are both culpable in what has transpired within the last couple of years. The U.S. government has been funding a certain lab in a certain country. And of course, that country is engaging in that funding and doing their own research. So there's a very complex, tangled web between the U.S. interests and involvement within this specific lab and China's involvement within this specific lab. So you have these global elites that don't really necessarily care about country, borders, things like that. They have their own world, right? This elite class. So that's very important to know. So it's not an or answer, it's an and answer, right? So it's the US and China.
Yeah.
I think that this should be criminally investigated.
Russia, Putin just submitted a 2,000-page document to NATO saying that the United States did it out of Ukraine, not out of Wuhan.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so like
interesting.
That's in there somewhere. I
yeah.
promise.
So we don't know yet who did it.
So, but the reality is, get to the bottom of it. Hold them accountable.
The elites did it. They don't care about your nationality, race. They may care about that. I'm not really exactly sure, but essentially, you have the host, Andy here, saying that allegedly the Russian leader said that Ukraine was involved in this. There could be some merit to that. I don't think so. If we were just going to look at the facts, I don't think the Ukrainians were involved in what happened within these last couple of years. Ukraine is not a first world country. Their economy is not that advanced. It's a semi backward country. And so they wouldn't even have the capacity to even involve themselves in something like this. Now, could there be a Ukrainian individual who just happens to be Ukrainian and they hold Ukrainian citizenship, they hold the Ukrainian passport, and, could one or two individuals have been involved within what happened? Maybe, but like I said, I think that's stretching the truth a little bit here.
Apply the law.
Yeah.
That's what I don't want to make up the law. Apply the law. We have laws in this country that reckless government officials intentionally disregarded. Now you have China.
So you believe in accountability?
I believe in accountability.
Okay.
full accountability
I believe
under the
in
law.
Heads on stakes, rotting on the White House lawn for 1,000 fucking years for people to see and know that we do not do this to people.
And for me, being that mean in prison is good enough.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Come on, dude. It's 2023. We're not going to put human heads in front of the White House. Come on, that's a joke.
All right. I if that happens, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
We'll say that.
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right.
No. Vivek,
Oh, yeah, it's my
you're
turn?
up.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
sure.
it. Let's do...
The COVID narrative is a good narrative. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah. Let's do... which ones haven't we done? Let's do Bidenomics for... What did you just do, 800?
Yeah.
Let's do Bidenomics for 800.
This quickly erodes the real value of local currency as the prices of all goods increase, causing people to minimize their holdings in that currency as they usually switch to more stable foreign currencies.
So it could be a couple of different things you could say here. You could say inflation, because that definitely is something that erodes the real value of local currency. Let's go with inflation.
Inflation?
Yeah.
Andy, you want to try? Three seconds.
I'm reading it.
I mean, inflation does do that, but...
Yeah, I would say it was inflation as well.
Okay. Well, the answer we were looking for was hyperinflation.
Okay.
Yeah, listen.
Come on.
There's a difference.
All right.
I mean, just saying.
All right.
Just
All right,
saying.
Alex.
Well, I mean, inflation would be a correct answer, but hypernflation is also a correct answer.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I like this guy,
It's a
though.
small
Yeah.
difference.
Sorry.
It's a small difference.
He's all right.
Let's get back to it. Let's try. You want to take another shot?
Yeah, sure. Let's do what should we say? Crime in America for 800.
Okay, crime in America for 800. This horrendous violent crime happens when an attacker kills or injures multiple individuals simultaneously while using a firearm.
Mass shooting.
Yeah, of course, absolutely mass shooting. Let's talk about this a little bit because we've been seeing upticks in this country.
Mhm.
What do we got on it?
I think we got a mental health epidemic in this country. I mean, I think we know how to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
We have a giant wave of violent crime in this country. Let's just confront that right now. We know how to
Absolutely.
address it. More cops on the streets. Not, and when I say on the streets, I mean like literally walking the streets, able to do their jobs without looking over their shoulders for fear of getting sued for doing their jobs. And the second thing is bring back mental health.
I definitely agree with that. But it's a two-way street, right? And it's not even a race thing because, you know, whites, blacks, Asians, people from the Middle East. Of course, I'm talking about Americans, right? These are all American citizens, but, you know, they descend from these different racial groups. You know, it's a two-way street. I definitely agree with Vivek about how cops should be able to do what they need to do without being sued and things like that. But we've seen, again, over and over that cops use excessive force. So it's a two-way street, right? But I understand he's a conservative, so he's pandering to the base.
Health institutions, because over the same period that we've seen the shuttering of mental health institutions, we have seen a direct rise in violent crime.
Agreed.
Now, I'm not in favor of mental health institutions that drug people up
Do
with
lobotomies.
Seroquel and Zoloft, and I don't want the one who flew over the cuckoo's nest kind of stuff here. But temporary involuntary commitments for psychiatrically ill people who pose a danger to their communities.
One word that can solve a lot of these mental health issues: psychedelics. Magic mushrooms is one form of a psychedelic that has been shown to actually treat mental illnesses in a permanent way. Of course, Big Pharma doesn't want this to happen because then all of these artificial drugs won't be flying off the racks. So there's a big lobbying group right now trying to stop you know, the legalization and the proliferation of psychedelics. But it's been proven to really help treat people, not just in the short term or temporarily, but in the long term. So a lot of these pharmaceutical companies produce these drugs, but it's temporary and it's on purpose because they want the client to keep buying them, and that increases their profits. But I think that's one aspect that we're not confronting. So hopefully Vivek, if he does become president, hopefully he looks into that and at least decriminalizes all psychedelics, right? So we're talking about psychedelic substances that are from the earth, right? As human beings, we're from the earth. These psychedelics are from the earth as well. So there's a connection there, right? So I think that's something that everybody needs to think about.
Bringing that back with, by the way, faith-based approaches that restore purpose, do this in a way that does not rely on the pharmaceutical industrial complex. We know how to get this done. Do we have the fortitude to do it? Those are politically incorrect things. Cops walking the street, ensuring law and order, making sure that they can't be sued for just simply doing their job that easily, and bringing back mental health institutions, including faith-based approaches, including some measure of involuntary commitment for psychiatrically ill people who pose a physical danger to their communities. That's how we address the problem. We know how to do it.
We've done it before.
We've done it before.
Yeah.
Question is, do we have the spine to actually do it? I
do.
Yeah. But that's what it's going to take.
Here's another problem, though. The Soros-funded prosecutors
they're not prosecuting.
Bro.
We have one here.
Yeah, we did.
Right here in St. Louis.
Yeah, really?
And they do not, so they've demoralized the police in all of these cities because they will not prosecute crime at all. And dude, this is another rub for you. You know, people talk about the Soros scholarship that you accepted. Let's talk about that for a second. What explain that, because dude, George Soros
is a disaster.
Yes, he's a criminal,
disaster.
Dude.
So George Soros in about 2016, that's when it coincided with the Trump administration. It's not a coincidence. Started funding these soft on crime prosecutors, and I've been a big critic of it, and we got to put it to an end. To be clear, George Soros has actually been, and his investment partners have been funding people on both sides of the political aisle. I'm not going to, call out individuals here, but there's another individual in this presidential campaign who this June hosted a fundraiser hosted by George Soros's investment partners. Another candidate has received a $160 million loan directly from George Soros. So it makes me laugh when those people's opposition research operations say that I got a Soros scholarship. Let's just set one thing straight. Nothing to do with George Soros. I have zero tie with George Soros other than being a critic of his. George Soros has a relative, Paul Soros, who made his money independently, who is long dead, who back in 2010 was one of the funders of a generic scholarship that at the age of 24, I applied for and won. Helped me pay for law school, $50,000 or whatever it was for 2 semesters of law school. Hundreds of kids win it. You're 20 in your 20s. And back in 2010, long before even the prosecutor wave that we're talking about here, some guy with the same last name, Soros, who's a relative of this other guy, George Soros, was one of the funders of a generic scholarship that I won. And I would have had to, at the age of 24, go into law school. Like the politics of that, it's just like not going through my head. There's a merit-based scholarship. It allows you to, in part, pay for law school. You would have had to be a fool. I would have had to be an idiot not to apply for and win that scholarship. And honestly, anybody who would have done that probably has no business doing trade deals from the White House on behalf of this country. But the fact of the matter is, you know what? Would a guy like me...
I think it was a pragmatic choice. However, although this is a pragmatic choice and it's convenient and it makes sense, right? And I understand what he's saying about, if an individual would not have taken that, they should not be able to negotiate trade deals from the White House, which makes sense because sometimes you do have to be flexible and you have to, bend yourself left and right to try and get the best deal for yourself. And in his case, if he does become U.S. president, get the best deal for not just himself, but for the U.S., right? So, he makes a valid point.
Me saying the things that I am saying now, be able to, win something like that now? No. But who cares? I've made it. I understand how to get ahead in this country. Didn't have any strings attached. If it did, nobody's going to put a muzzle on me telling me what I can and can't say.
I think people
but
are
the fact
afraid,
of the matter is, it's a disaster.
I think this goes back to the Obama, the shit we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I think people are afraid that you're going to get in there and then kind of change tune. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think people People are so
for me, it is so. I mean, like my
they're
first
so
reaction is to
sensitive.
like laugh.
Hold on one second. They're
but
so
I get
sensitive.
It, but I get it.
Yeah, they're so sensitive because, dude, we've all witnessed what these people have done.
Totally.
And and it's not going under the radar anymore. Like, people are now like, okay, anything World Economic.
This guy, for some reason, look, I have my own critiques of President Obama. You know, I've critiqued his lack of policy initiatives, specifically for African Americans. I mean, he's done a lot for the gay community, you know, which is great, whatever. But you know, he hasn't implemented a lot of policies specifically for African Americans. He destabilized Libya, which ended up creating a immigration or illegal immigration problem for the entire continent of Europe. So I definitely have my critiques of him. However, you can't just go around saying that Obama was the worst thing that has ever happened. He came into the US presidency in a recession, and if he didn't, and it was a deep recession, if he didn't take action, we would have entered something like the Great Depression in the 1930s, if not something even worse, because of George W. Bush. He rescued the American economy. Full stop. President Obama rescued and revitalized the American economy. Now, we can talk about bailouts, bailing out the banks, things like that. There are valid points on each side of that argument. However, you cannot deny that he rescued the American economy, revitalized it, and left the economy in good hands with President Trump. President Trump inherited a good economy, and he was able to, you know, ride the wave of that, of good economics. So I'm really sick of these people, like this podcast host, who, you know, mentions that Obama's just this worst. He's the worst president ever, and he's done nothing. And you know, there are a lot of people in rural America that have benefited from Obamacare. There have been a lot of white rural Americans that have benefited from Obamacare. Now, within their state, they don't call it Obamacare; they call it something else, right? So, and when people sign up for this healthcare within their state, it's a completely different name, but it's from Obama. So, is Obamacare perfect? No, it's not. But for this guy to just go insane about how horrible Obama was, George W. Bush was, you can't even he was even worse. But of course, he's not going to talk about that. So this guy is just a little nutty.
Form, no.
Yes,
anything
that's correct.
Soros, no. Alex Soros, no. George Soros, fucking Soros, no. No, yeah. Soros. Like that's where people are at. And
that's where people should be at right now.
So I'm trying to. So I think the reason I'm asking these questions is because I want to get So
Donald Trump, shortly before running for office, took a $160 million loan from George Soros. Mm-hmm. Should that be disqualifying of Donald Trump? My opinion on that, no. Because he's a businessman.
Well, no one does talk about that.
No one does talk about it. But just talk about facts. Let's talk about facts. Right. Shortly before running, in his adult life as a businessman, takes a $160 million loan. Do I hold that against him? No. Do I think the people should hold that against him? No. Because it's guided by what he's going to do. If that came with strings attached to say what you must do in government, different story. But we know it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Ron DeSantis, even, George Soros has been praising Ron DeSantis during this race, saying he wants him to win this primary. Hosted an investment partner of George Soros this June, hosted a fundraiser for Ron DeSantis. Is that a problem? I don't have all the answers to say whether that is or is not a problem. I haven't been hitting him over it, but I don't have the facts to say that's a problem.
I did not know that Donald Trump took a loan from George Soros. I mean, Vivek he's spitting facts. And this is why he's great.
People should decide. I've been very transparent about it. There is a generic scholarship funded by a relative of George Soros who is long dead in 2010.
This is his brother, right?
Yeah, it's his brother who made his money independently. Mm-hmm. And so if you're 24, you're like, oh, by the way, did I know about George Soros's liberal agendas back then? No. In fact, when did George Soros start funding these soft on crime prosecutors? 2016. So at the age of 24, if you're in 2010, saying that, hey, there's an opportunity for me to win $50,000. And actually, I haven't told this story before. Literally, here's how I heard about it. There were a bunch of people in law school that first year, 1L fall, talking about it. They're like, oh my God, the deadline's Monday for the scholarship. I'm like, oh, what's that? They're like, there's the scholarship. You can win $50,000. I said, oh, that's cool. The deadline was on Monday. I heard about it on Friday. These people have been preparing for weeks. I said, how long does it take to fill out? They're like, oh, there's this application. I said, I'll do it on that Sunday. They did turned it in. Win the scholarship for $50,000 at the age of 24. Yeah, you take it. Like, that's the answer. And so, like I said, people, my job is to tell you who I am and what I stand for. We have a country to save. And so if that is really going to hold you up, like on that set of facts, when we got it, we have a serious job to do. Pick who's going to lead this country next. It probably would also have hold you up from picking Donald Trump for taking a $160 million loan from George.
It's interesting.
Probably hold you up from Ron DeSantis.
Heard that.
But it's
have you?
Facts.
I've seen it, but I was never able to like verify it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's facts.
It's interesting that no one talks about that.
But it's, well, but my point is have all the facts and then make a decision.
Yeah.
And
I think that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, whose turn?
It's just the truth.
Got him.
Look, dude, I'm going to ask
Got him.
questions. You know
you should, man.
Yeah.
And
Got him.
And I've been, I've probably answered this one, 20 some odd times, but that's okay because not everybody hears it every time. We have a website that we just put up. It was a good suggestion somebody gave us.
I just think we're dealing with a very.
So he said, all right, here's all the and people should ask the questions.
Yeah.
But read it for yourself. Decide
for yourself. Our trust has been violated. Our trust and belief in
repeatedly.
Yeah, dude. And we've been we see the people come on TV every day and fucking lie to us, dude.
Our face.
Look at the White House spokespeople the entire time
Calm down.
Biden's been in office.
Calm down, dude. Calm down. Lied to us? Are you serious? George W. Bush lied to us. The biggest lie that actually changed the respect for America. Because I remember the days before we invaded Iraq. People looked up to the United States. People respected the United States, even though, even before Iraq, we've done some horrible things. But for the most part, people were looking up to us. Now, if you go overseas as an American, people don't care. Actually, people look down on you. Now, you wouldn't know that if you just never left your state or never left the country. You might think that, when you go overseas, that people think you're great because you're from the United States. So when this guy is saying, yes, has Biden lied? I'm not even a Biden supporter. So has Biden lied? Yes. Has Obama lied? Yes. But this guy is so full of it where the biggest liar is George W. Bush. Has Trump lied? Forgot about him. Yeah. He's a really big liar. So this selective outrage that this guy has is just absolutely ridiculous. What he should be mad about, if he's really concerned about lies, out of all the recent memory of U.S. presidents, George W. Bush is one of the biggest liars. This selective outrage is just really funny.
Look at the media. Look at these fucking people. These people go on TV and they fucking lie to our faces every single day. And so people
he's mad.
Now where
he's mad.
Like,
watch out.
We're living in a true banana republic. This is total lies. It's Orwell's 1984, and their trust for anything is just none.
Yep.
So, and I appreciate the fact that you say so openly, like they should be skeptical.
They should.
Because that is
let's just go through the list because I grew up in this, right? Lied about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11.
Yeah.
Lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
There we go, Vivek. Yep. And, I have my critiques of Vivek, but if I were God and if I had to pick the Republican nominee for president, it would be Vivek.
Lied about the 2008 financial crisis bailout justification.
Lied about who killed Kennedy.
You just keep going down there. The Hunter Biden laptop story, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, the origin of COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, you just keep going down the list. How our money's being spent in Ukraine.
And by the way, these lies, this has been going on since the dawn of human history, right? People in power need to lie and need to manipulate. And as, the citizenry of a country, we will never eliminate lies and manipulation from the government, but what we can do is mitigate it to its lowest level, right? So, for example, you will never solve crime. You will never get to world peace. However, we can at least mitigate it and reduce it to its lowest possible level.
So I get it. I mean, my best advice is
I
be
know you get
skeptical about everybody. Be skeptical about me. We've
Yeah.
got to. It's the only way forward as a country. But we've got to place our bets on how we're going to do this. And I think I know where I'm at.
Yeah.
And even if I was in the shoes of somebody else looking at the outside in at me, would I be a little skeptical at first? Maybe I'd be skeptical of everybody. But I think I'm the best bet we've got. And that's why I'm in this race.
I think you are saying, I think what you're saying for most people is exactly what they want to hear. I think
that's super refreshing.
Dude, listen, when I saw you raise your hand on TV about the Ukraine thing, or when I saw you say, hey, we shouldn't be giving money to other countries. And then you have people saying, oh, well, you know, Israel's our biggest ally. We need Israel. No, we're America, dude. We are Americans. We are taking care of Americans. We have bad American problems right now. And until those are fixed, we shouldn't be doing anything with anybody else. Like, I don't know if anybody's noticed, and probably not, because
he's finally seeing some good things.
Never traveled to Europe or anywhere else. But when you go into the cities of this country versus the cities of other countries, guess who the third world country is? It's
us.
Not them. It's us.
Go to Kensington.
Yep.
In the middle of Philadelphia, right? I've gone to India growing up. We've seen, I mean, we didn't have toilets. We'd squat on the ground. We get sick every time where we go. Like, that's what that looked like. I have not seen a place worse. And that was India in the 90s. It's not even India today. I've been to Kensington 2 months ago. I haven't seen a third world nation as bad as Kensington in the middle of Philadelphia today in the United States. And so that's just, you know what? When I raise my hand for saying that
These
I would
people are Americans. These are Americans.
When I would pardon Trump or what I would do in Ukraine, I've lost.
And I do like what Andy is saying here, the podcast host. You know, these people in Kensington, you know, they're primarily black, but they're Americans. And, you know, that's what he was saying. You know, these are Americans. These are Americans. Absolutely. And I think this America First agenda could be the bridge between Republicans and Democrats, because I think everybody is sick of, you know, these U.S. cities just rotting. I was in L.A. for the first time in my life 2 months ago. And listen, all the bad things that you hear about L.A., it's true. And I guess Kensington in Philadelphia is even worse. So I don't think this America First agenda is some, you know, alt-right ideology. No, America First should be Democrat, Republican, Independents, whoever you are. If you are an American citizen, you should be on board with this, because whether or not, you know, what makes our country so great is that you can look like Vivek, you can look like me, you can look like the podcast host, and that's what makes us so powerful. Not the diversity like Vivek says, but the fact that we're all Americans, right? So let's get on board with this America First.
Serious potential backing over it.
Yeah.
So, you know, think about that when you
That's
think about whether I mean what I'm saying.
Yeah, look, dude.
It's like over the context of, you know, people say, well, are you just saying that to get look, I'm losing serious money in terms of potential donations over this, but you be the judge. And that's the judge of who you want as your next president. Do you want someone who's saying the wrong things or somebody who's saying the right things? Someone who's saying the right things is your best darn bet.
I don't even think it's the right things. I think it's what the truth is.
It's
and
the truth.
Sometimes people aren't going to like the truth.
Absolutely.
That's reality. You know, I can appreciate the candor very much.
That's what we're founded on. Is it your turn?
Yeah.
Sandy's turn.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Let's go with deep state for 1,000.
Deep state for 1,000. This man allegedly ran an underground CIA operation that used blackmail and pedophilia to influence and affect change.
Who is Jeffrey Epstein?
No.
What?
No, yeah, it's just Jeffrey.
What, dude? For heart's sake. Listen, man, I'm a fucking winner. You can't do that shit to me.
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein, man. Yeah, I mean, listen. What do you really think the whole Epstein Island thing? Like, I mean, we can do tinfoils if we need to. I don't know if they're necessary at this point, but like,
I don't think it's tinfoil anymore.
No,
I think
that's
this
what I'm saying.
is a real
Enough shit is
discussion.
out.
This is real, yeah.
Enough stuff is out. What
Facts.
is your genuine take on the Epstein Island situation?
So I think that it's kind of what it looks like.
You think it's what
it looks like, which is that he was the dealer for a lot of men to do what they could afford to pay for. And it was just a quiet understanding that this is how the game works. It's people on both sides of the political aisle, people across
Absolutely.
the business world. And
Disgusting.
they knew that if he was in prison and he had a chance to get out, that was a serious risk. I mean, if you think about like Bill Gates, looks like he got divorced over it, right? I mean, look what they're sweeping under the rug
Allegedly,
for that.
yeah.
Right. And so, no, I mean, they're not allegedly on that. I mean, his wife has been
so
very
she
clear.
said straight up.
She
She
said
said
straight up that was his relationship with Epstein. Now, she didn't say it was going to the islands or anything.
Yeah.
But she says Bill Gates' like bizarrely allegiant relationship to Jeffrey Epstein was part of
Weirdo.
his divorce. So this is like nobody not nobody, but there are a lot of people ensnared at the highest levels of business and politics and international governance in what is really just a base human instinct that Jeffrey Epstein was peddling to me, which was sex. Now, about the underage elements of this or whatever, I mean, I haven't dived deep into the ugly, sordid nature of this. I started watching the documentary. I just couldn't take it. It made me feel god awful. And so I just said, turn it off. I'm going to watch something else. But it is what meets the eye. Now, that guy dies. It's interesting that he tells supposedly his brother, who comes out and says that they were describing him as suicidal, but in fact, his brother's telling him that he's not suicidal. This is before he dies. And then the guy turns up dead.
Oh, and then the cameras are out. The cameras are out at the subway shooting. The cameras are out at Uvalde.
I actually think, you know who I think did a pretty good segment on this, which I thought was interesting and asked the right questions, because there's always like, you can make up like a lot of narratives, but I prefer to stay grounded to fact. Tucker Carlson actually did a pretty good job of this. I want to say it was earlier this year before he, before his TV show ended.
Fox,
It was a pretty good evidence-based segment that pointed to the fact that the supposed investigation never really investigated the possibility that it was somebody on the floor, right? Somebody else, a different person, or potentially even prisoner or guard on the same floor that did the deed, right? The investigation found that nobody came into the prison. Okay, but then you create enough of a smoke screen that attracts the lightning rod. You haven't just eliminated every possibility, but you use that possibility to create a deflection. It's kind of what they're doing with the Hunter Biden gun charges, right? The unlawful possession charges. We're going after him.
Absolutely.
Maybe he was a cocaine user and he didn't write that as an application for the firearm. What do they know? There's a bunch of public anger at this situation. It's like lightning in the air. It needs a lightning rod. Make that the lightning rod, and then hopefully the real thing goes away.
Yeah, because nobody else.
That's the trick they use repeatedly. So I think they use that trick here with the supposed investigation of whether somebody came in through the front door. They said, no, we have security footage around the perimeter and nobody came in or out. Well, that doesn't eliminate the possibility that
means there was somebody inside,
because there are a lot of people inside.
Yeah, right.
And so to deduce from that he killed himself is a big leap to ask people to believe, and especially against the circumstances. I just think that one of the things I've said is, look, when I'm U.S. president, we will release the client list. I don't care who's on there. Republican, Democrat. We've got to roll that log over. Every log that is.
If I am U.S. president, I will release the client list, and I don't care who's on it. Honest to God, I might have to vote for this guy. Because that single act is going to create a moral shock wave throughout the entire planet Earth, and it will refrain people for the next 100 years, maybe 200 years, of engaging in something like that, especially now with technology, over the internet. If you send anything over the internet, it could be released, right? So, wow. That is amazing, and I think he has my vote just off of that, because I think releasing that list will actually quantitatively and qualitatively make the world a better place. That's amazing.
It's been festering with something underneath it. Roll the log over, see what crawls out. That is the only way we're going to rebuild public trust in this country.
Yeah, I believe.
Absolutely.
My opinion on this Epstein stuff is, and I've talked to listen, there's a lot of, you've talked to some of these guys too, who have spent time in these agencies, who understand what Epstein was really about. And the reason that they are not throwing a lot of these people under the bus is because they're actually using these people to leverage public opinion through their influence. And so you have people who own major social media platforms implicated in this. You have people who own media outlets implicated in this. And they are using the blackmail to steer the public narrative and the public marketing and make trends. And then they're using, like in big tech, bot networks and fake profiles and censorship and then limitation of reach to create these. This is why I said earlier, I don't think the people are with any of this stuff.
No,
like when you were talking about the Ukraine flags and the trans flags, like, dude, they make it appear that people are with it. But the reality is when we go out here in the real world, who's really with it? There's a tiny little percentage of people that show up, and that percentage is getting less and less and less by the day. It's not 2020 where hundreds of millions of people fell for one of these psyop. Right. Now people are starting to wake up.
And that's a good thing.
Absolutely, bro.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And I think that's one of the great services of, the Trump years. Expose the corruption of the media, expose the corruption of an establishment that now we know, at least, we're not going to just be blind parrots that parrot out whatever we're fed. Right. Now the next frontier is don't be anybody's blind parrot, because it's not just going to be the mainstream media that feeds you those lies. And one of the things I've learned is when you're in that situation where you have lost your trust in, say, mainstream media or mainstream politicians, it goes back to that void, right? You still have a void. Don't let something else fill that void either. So I'm not, people call us a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not actually a conspiracy theorist. I'm driven by facts and data. Mm-hmm. And if those facts and data defect from what the traditional orthodoxy is, great. But if those facts and actual details lead me away from whatever a tantalizing conspiracy narrative would be that might be more fun to pursue, no, I'm still going to stay tethered to what's true. And the Epstein case, it's not that they engineered the cameras from the outside. I mean, I don't have any evidence to suggest that, but it might not have come from the outside. And the fact that they deflected all of the attention over there says that you still got to ask the basic questions that haven't been asked. And I think the public at this point deserves to know who's on that client list. I'll publish it when I'm president.
Love it.
The DOJ has
amazing.
What's your opinion on declassification of
I think it should be much more quick than it is today.
Yeah.
The 20-year justification is just made up. I mean, if you look at the declassification of those documents around what we knew about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11, it came 20 years later.
Yeah.
20.
And I agree with this. What makes a government great is not just transparency, right? Like we saw in the video about inflation and hyperinflation. I think hyper transparency is what's going to unite the country so that people can actually know what's going on. Right? I mean, if you're at work, you want to know that your bosses and managers and, VPs are being transparent with you, right? When people are not transparent with you, there's a reason for that. 20 years of that's way too long. The reason why the U.S. government has this declassification process where it takes decades just to declassify some things is because they're trafficking in illegal activity. And so they have this long time frame to declassify something, because once they actually do it, they make sure that they clean everything up. And then once they've cleaned everything up, laced everything up, made sure that they cleaned up the crime scene, then they can go ahead and release it and say, oh, well, we've done some bad things, but that was 20 years ago. And sorry to tell you now, but it is what it is. Right. So I think that all of us now are definitely fed up with that. So Vivek is on point once again.
Years too late after the government already lied about it.
It's almost like that Pfizer thing where they tried to hold that report for 70 years.
It's just they're trying to stonewall you into saying that nobody's going to care and filibuster. In some sense, they're right. It works.
We keep coming back.
I think the declassification regime needs to change dramatically. I also think this entire invocation of national security as a justification for more or less doing anything is god awful. I think the FISA, I think the FISA, what is it, Section 7 of the Act that allows wiretapping on any conversation that you have with somebody who isn't a U.S. citizen without a warrant is a bastardization of the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution of the United States. And so I have pretty strong when it comes to the national security establishment's overreach, pretty strong libertarian instincts that I'm going to abide by in the way I lead this country.
When you think, like, when we keep coming back to trust, right? We keep coming back to trust. Trust. That's a big problem for American people right now. I truly believe that one of the only ways that we can get trust back is through accountability and declassification of information in real time. The truth.
I just get to the truth. So one thing I've said that
Now, I think there does need to be a fine line. You can't have real-time transparency and declassification because there are certain operations that are conducted by the government that does need to be kept secret, right? When you're engaging with an enemy as the United States, you can't just declassify everything in real time. That's idiotic. That is literally, that's delusional. There needs to be some sort of keeping the cards close to the chest, right? And, as an American, I wouldn't want my country to be so transparent in real time to the point where, okay, if you declassify everything in real time or if you're transparent in real time, how can we do anything as a country to better our position in the world? It doesn't work that way, man. So I definitely agree with Vivek. There needs to be hyper transparency in the process of declassification, but with the host saying that we need real time transparency or declassification, that's actually dangerous to our national interests.
I would do in my first month in office is any time a government official has pressured a private actor to do something that the government official couldn't do directly, we will publish it for the world to see. That's what Elon did with the Twitter files. That's one company, right? So, and we saw how ugly that was. I actually wrote about this in January of 2021. I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal with a former law professor of mine saying that what's really happening is the government is using a combination of carrots and sticks, threats and inducements to get social media companies to silence content that otherwise would have been constitutionally permissible.
For sure.
They said at the time that's a conspiracy theory. The reality is far worse than we ever imagined.
Even the politicians are missing the point, bro.
Oh, the politicians are missing the point completely. So one of the things,
because
principle number one is transparency, and we don't need Congress to do it. So we will just instruct every government agency on pain of penalty that they have to at least publish, roll the log over, see what crawls out, bring the pesticide. And I think that's the way we need the next president to act.
Yeah, there needs to be real regulation around the censorship issues that come from social media. Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri was on the show a few weeks ago.
Good guy.
And great guy. Real guy, a real guy that really cares. And Eric has been fighting against big tech. As you know, he's been filing the lawsuits. Now, one of the things that nobody talks about is how they actually censor. They talk about how they just put a warning label or they remove platform and deplatform, right? Like how they did to Trump. But that's not really how they censor.
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
How
it's
they
all
censor is
invisible.
It's the freedom of reach that they talk about.
Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach.
Yeah, and that's bullshit.
It's
that's
BS,
censorship.
Total BS.
And that's how they craft the narratives.
And so you might say something, but it's purposefully buried by algorithms. The other thing is they've kicked it down the chain. So it's not the top executives anymore. It's not just first it was distributed people, little minions working through the companies. So they had
little minions.
Right. Oh no, it was just a minion. Now they go from the minion to actually making it AI. So here's a dirty little secret within Silicon Valley, okay? The way the AI works is it's a trained algorithm, right? They train the algorithm to sort of spot who's likely to be suspicious or not. I kid you not. If you have an American flag on your profile, your speech is more likely to be flagged for review. So think about how dystopian that is right now. It's like straight out of Orwell.
We're living in it.
We're in the United States, and if you have a U.S. flag, that means that what you say is more likely to be algorithmically suppressed.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah,
insane. But I want to ask you, because so you're running for president. The deep state is an issue.
Yes.
How do you combat it?
So I think the way our system works is actually on pretty solid footing. Okay, the U.S. president is empowered by Article 2 of the Constitution.
And by the way, when Vivek says the administrative state, it's synonymous with the deep state.
To run the executive branch of the government. Who would have ever thought that there's one executive branch and that the U.S. president is actually empowered to use it? So read the law. There's the 1977 Presidential Reorganization Act that says that if there are redundant government agencies, or if there are actual agencies that would, the shutdown of which would stimulate the economy, then the U.S. president already has the authority from Congress to do it. Those provisions of the 1977 Act are unexpired. Read the civil service protection rules. Like I said earlier, they don't apply to mass layoffs. That's why mass layoffs are absolutely what we want to bring to the table. And we'll probably bore your audience here, but 5 U.S.C. 3302. It's a law that gives the U.S. president the sole authority to set the regulations governing the Office of Personnel Management. That's the HR department of the executive branch of the federal government. What we have missed is a combination of, yes, someone who understands all of that is usually going to be some legal scholar or somebody who's an academic or somebody who understands it but doesn't want to use that authority because they're part of the system. But you need somebody who has an understanding of the laws and the Constitution, combined with somebody who has complete and total disregard for the norms in the administrative state in Washington, D.C.
That's a dangerous combination. Love it.
I think that that's a rare combination, right? Those qualities don't go together.
Yes.
But that's why I say I look myself in the mirror. We each ask ourselves, how are we going to play our part? And all it takes, this is good news. We don't need Congress for this. Right? Congress is in some ways, many senses, bought into the system by the same special interests that control Congress, also want that administrative regulatory state to keep pushing the regulations that protect the people who are in charge in the private sector. There's a reason why big companies want to self-regulate, because it creates barriers for smaller companies from competing against them. So it's that rare combination. An outsider who comes in willing to break glass, but who also understands the toolkit that the U.S. president can actually wield, not just relying on advisors, because advisors are still swamp creatures most of the time. They were in Trump's administration for sure. That's a rare combination. So I can get this job done. By the end of my first term, 75% headcount reduction in the U.S. federal bureaucracy, no problem. Shutting down multiple government agencies, no problem. It just takes, the 2024 election landing in the right person's unique hands to be able to see that through. And that's the one thing I know I can get done.
So he promised us an hour and a half. We're past an hour and a half. Let me ask the last thing. Taxes.
Yes.
All right.
12% flat tax.
All right.
Across the board. And by the way, eliminate the broken...
we're very aligned.
I mean, equality of opportunity. It was harder for me to, I didn't grow up in wealth. Why do we want to create a treadmill that makes it harder for people to live the American dream?
People don't understand the financial oppression that occurs. You understand as a business owner.
12%.
I understand.
Capital gain, ordinary income. I don't care. All these are artificial distinctions. 12% flat tax.
How many more careers could you create with a 12% tax?
Tons, actually. Dude. I mean, it'd be a economic revival in this country. That's what the American dream's founded on.
We're very aligned. I'm still for heads on stakes.
Great interview.
I'm for people behind bars using the judicial system to do it and hold them accountable.
I'm with you, bro.
That's.
But if the death penalty is the consequence,
hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so be it.
Hey, listen, I just want to.
I want
to be respectful of your time. I want to say, hey, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, man.
I've really enjoyed the conversation. I get a really good feeling from you. I'm pretty good with people. I appreciate you addressing some of the more, difficult issues that you're getting hammered with right now. I think these are important issues to address, and I respect the way that you've addressed them. So,
let's do it again.
Yeah, man.
I
would enjoy this
anytime, man.
This is fun. Yeah, I enjoyed this.
As the campaign unfolds and as some more things, let's try to set something up again.
That'd be fun.
As you go across the country, stop in here and we'll hit something.
I'd love that.
But I just want to say, man, I think what you're doing is important. I respect that you're doing it as a 38-year-old man. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of balls. And I think it's fucking awesome, man.
Thanks, man. We'll keep at it.
Yeah. Now, we're going to see what happens in the primaries. That would be my last question.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't selected as the candidate, how do you see yourself moving from there?
I'm not a plan B kind of guy.
I understand.
This is not how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And so you take this undertaking on laser focused on what you set out to do.
I can respect that.
And for me, my destination isn't even January 2025 when we take office. it's January 2033 when we leave office.
Yeah.
I'm laser focused on that. I haven't made a lot of promises, but there are a few promises I've made I intend to keep. When we leave office, we'll drop the mic and then move on to the next phase of life from there. And, I didn't get to where I am, and I suspect you didn't get to where you are either by being plan B kind of people.
No.
You map it.
I've got entire podcasts about not having a plan B.
You do? Oh, seriously? Well, I'm not a plan B guy. So that's just the answer.
Total commitment.
And even at earlier stages in my life, and when you sort of try to map it out on a paper, well, if this, then this, your plans are stupid.
Yeah.
And my plans are stupid. It's not about my plans. It's about a vision for the country. We've committed ourselves to it.
That's right.
We're not stopping until we're done.
Anything great requires that level of commitment. That's something that we talk about on the show all the time.
That's my experience in life.
Dude, you cannot do it. You can't do it if you're thinking about other things. It's going to get too.
Great podcast. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, you guys have a good night. Cheers.